Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the GM. It is your guy, Boulanger. Up next on the GM, State of the Ravens. Do me a quick favor, hit like. If it is your first time checking out the GM, hit subscribe. Also, hit the notification bell so that you get updates when we upload new content. Let's talk about it. Well, of course, we know regular season's over, postseason's over, and we've taken a look back at the AFC Championship. We've looked inside. We've looked on the outside. We've turned it upside down. We shook out all the contents of it. We talked about all the plays that were made. We talked about all the plays that were not made. Some people talked about the fix was in and all of those things. But the fact of the matter is, we still sit here with unanswered questions concerning what we saw this past Sunday, right? We sit here today, 1 week past the AFC Championship, and I think we still have more questions than answers. We heard John Harbaugh on Friday say a few things concerning the AFC Championship, and none of what he said kind of made a lot of sense. When you really put it in a football context, the things he said was just coach speak. And that's par for the course for John Harbaugh. So, we won't relitigate anything that he said. It kind of is what it is. So, what I want to do in this video, I just want to talk about where we are. And if I had to rate the Baltimore Ravens as far as stability, solidness, foundation, scale of 1 to 10, I'm going to put them at a 5, which means they're just stable. They're not above average and they're not below average. They're just right, perfectly in the middle. You see, the reason why I say the state of the Ravens is just stable, right, is simply because we have a few assets that we're going to hold on to. Okay. We're going to come back in the 2024 season with a little bit more familiarity with the offense between Todd Monken and Lamar Jackson. We're going to come back, unfortunately, with John Harbaugh as the head coach. So we're super familiar with who he is and what he is. We're going to come back with a little bit of familiarity with some defensive pieces that are still in place. But the part of the reason why they're not above a 5 and they're not below a 5 is because there's a lot of questions on what's going to happen on how this team will be put together for 2024. As we currently sit, the Baltimore Ravens are not a championship team. They have some championship pieces, but collectively, they're not a championship team. And that's what I really want to get into. When you look at the Baltimore Ravens, you have to look at all of the aspects. You have to look at coaching, you have to look at offense, you have to look at defense, and then you have to look at cap space availability and draft capital. And when you look at coaching, half of the Baltimore Ravens nation is okay with John Harbaugh returning as the coach. The other half wants him gone, right? And if I'm honest, I've seen more people want him gone than to keep him around. But it certainly looks like he's going to be with us for at least one more year. So we have to, unfortunately, just accept that. So coaching all by itself under John Harbaugh's leadership brings us down to a 5. Okay. So then if John Harbaugh's the leader and we look at the offense, well, we still have Todd Monken, who seemingly made some decisions this past season that were not favorable to the offense productivity. We did look good in the second half of the season, and then we fell on our face in the AFC Championship, the biggest game of the year, where there was some questionable play calling, questionable game management, questionable clock management. And so that alone, coaching, brings us back down to a 5, right? I'm not going to take him below a 5 simply because the offense did look somewhat better under Todd Monken than under Greg Roman as far as productivity, things of that nature, being able to adjust. But what we saw over the last week, or specifically 1 week, brings more things into question. So then we got head coach, offensive coordinator, then we drop down to the offense itself. Well, you have a franchise quarterback, whether people love him or hate him or just like him. Lamar Jackson is our franchise quarterback, and we always say that with Lamar Jackson, we do have a chance, right? What is that chance? To win. All right. But then when you look around the perimeter, the peripheral of Lamar Jackson, you look at the offensive line, it needs upgrading. When you look at the running back room, it needs upgrading. When you look at the wide receivers, they need some upgrades, right? And so then that brings the offense just by itself below a five, right? See, because there's more upgrading that's needed than we probably have cap space and capital, draft capital to do. So there's going to be some mixing and matching. There's going to be some hopefuls to patch in that offensive line. There's going to have to be some things that are done. You know, tackles need to upgrade. Left guard specifically needs an upgrade as it pertains to the offensive line. And then with the wide receivers, you know, we don't know really what the Odell Beckham contract is going to look like. It was bad from the beginning, so we don't know how it's going to affect us next year. We don't know if Rashad Bateman is going to be the guy who steps up and develops a chemistry with Lamar Jackson. We know what Zay Flowers is. We don't know if Nelson Aguilar is coming back or if the Baltimore Ravens can upgrade over Nelson Aguilar. So there's a lot of questions, right? The only thing we know for certain on offense is that there's Tyler Lindenbaum, Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely, and Zay. Okay, and so it creates a stability to have those pieces, but but it makes it unstable to have all of those areas that need some upgrade. All right. When we jump to the defensive side of the ball, we understand that we lost Mike McDaniel and excuse me, Mike McDonald. And that's going to be a huge loss. But I think that Zach Orr, a young 31-year-old defensive coordinator, he may have some schemes and some tricks and and a system that puts the defense in good position. So I don't think it's going to be a detriment defensively. I think it certainly will be a learning curve. But I think that because he has been in the NFL for 3 years coaching, he's been a player in this league at a high level. And the position that he played, Zach Orr is who I'm speaking of. The position that he played specifically is a position that is considered the hub of the defense. When you're in that middle linebacker position, you're at the hub. You're at the command center most of the time of the defense. So he's able to understand the defense from the control center, so to speak. So I think that bodes well for the Baltimore Ravens defensively. Okay. When you look at the defense itself, I'm gonna call it stable. Although we have some big time free agents, and I will address all things free agency once I get back after February 15th. But we have, Patrick Queen, Justin Metabike or Metabuke, however you want to pronounce it, and then we also have Geno Stone. I think there is a high potential to lose all three. But I think that even if you lost all three, I think you still have some stability at all three levels. In the trenches, you're still going to have Michael Pierce and Broderick Washington, although we need Broderick to step up. You're still going to have Travis Jones down in the trenches. So that's a good start. In the middle, you're going to have Roquan Smith and possibly Trenton Simpson, a second-year linebacker who has a lot of athleticism, some speed. He flashed in the one game that he did play this past season. So I think that that could be a positive if we lose Patrick Queen, which seems more likely than not. And then I think in the secondary, all four starters should be returning. That's Marlon Humphrey, Marcus Williams, Kyle Hamilton, and Brandon Stevens. Now, so basically, you have a good foundation defensively. You're going to need some depth. You're going to have to kill it in the draft, and you're going to probably have to add a few pieces in free agency. But I think defensively, we're going to be okay. I don't think we're going to be the record breaking defense as we go into 2024 that we were in 2023. And I don't think it's just primarily because of coaching. I just think it's going to be primarily because of personnel. I think that this is the off season where the Baltimore Ravens have to focus on the offense, primarily because you have $260 million invested in your quarterback. And I think that if you're going to invest that kind of money into the quarterback position, you have to also invest in the personnel that surrounds that quarterback. We understand that the Baltimore Ravens historically have been a defensive minded team, but I think that once you pay that quarterback, you have to invest in the parts around him. I think that the Baltimore Ravens have to look at the offensive line, and I think that they have to go into the draft and they have to draft somebody at the left tackle position. Maybe not to take over for Ronnie Stanley in 2024, simply because Ronnie Stanley contract is so upside down that he's just going to be on the roster. You cannot carry that kind of dead cap money unless they restructure his deal to where it's team friendly and they can get off his money a lot quicker. But I think that drafting a left tackle to sit and learn, maybe do some rotational stuff like they did this year, I think could be beneficial for a guy to step in and replace Ronnie Stanley in 2025. I think John Simpson may be out because we have a couple of options in Salah and also Voorhees, who was drafted this past season. And I think that we get a little younger, maybe a little more skilled, and maybe a little more bang for our buck at that left guard position. I know Kevin Zeitler at the right guard position. Tyler Lindenbaum is solid and he's in place, so we don't have to even talk about him. But I think the right guard position, Kevin Zeitler, had a really good year. Actually, I think he was a fill-in for the Pro Bowl this year. And I think that the Baltimore Ravens may be willing to bring him back on a team-friendly deal. I think that would be okay. But at the same time, we need to put some investment into the backup right guard position. And then I think that at the right tackle position, I think that we need to see what Daniel Falele can do, or or make Patrick McCarry the option at the right tackle position. Here's the deal. I understand that McCarry has been the most diverse and universal offensive lineman in Ravens camp over the last 3 or 4 years. But I think that if you're going to invest $6 million into him to be a backup, you might as well put him in and see if he can start. Now, he may fall on his face, but I think it's time to see what he can actually do as a full-time starter. So that's the offensive line. When you jump to the running back room, I think that the Baltimore Ravens have to go look at some free agent options. I'll get into that conversation a little deeper once we get back to work. But I think they look at some free agent options, and I think they also need to go get a dynamic back in the draft. I think that there's a lot of good backs, a lot of power, some speed, some catchability, all those kind of things in this draft. I think that they have to go big game hunting in the draft. Now, none of these running backs are rated high enough to be a first round pick, which means they have low grades. Now, there will certainly be somebody who jumps out after the combine. Maybe they run faster than expected. Maybe they're bigger than expected. Maybe they have more athleticism than expected. And they may jump into the first round. But I don't think the Baltimore Ravens need to draft a running back in that first round. I think we certainly could get some value in the third round and have a guy who is a starter after 1 year. In fact, I think the Baltimore Ravens need to go after a bell cow, somebody who can tote the ball, catch the ball, be a three down back, pick up the blitz, all those kind of things. With understanding, I think that Justice Hill is more of a third down back. And we understand that Keaton Mitchell is super, super explosive, but he's not an every down back. And we saw that when they tried to use him that way. And so I think that he needs to stay the element of surprise. He still has hopefully he still has elite level speed when he comes back off the ACL injury, so on and so forth. But you don't know what he will be when he comes back. So I think we need to invest in a running back in this year's draft. So that's what I'm thinking about for the running back position. We need some upgrades. Again, we can look at the free agency market, or we can go into the draft and pick up a guy. When we look at the wide receiver position, there's really only two guys that I'm certain will be on this roster in 2024. That's Rashad Bateman and Zay Flowers. Those are the only two guys that are for certain. I think we know less about if Odell Beckham Jr. will come back, even though he had his contract redone. And then I think Nelson Aguilar and Tylen Wallace, I think that there's opportunity for upgrades over both of those guys. There's some guys in free agency I would love to see the Baltimore Ravens pursue. Some of them is big game hunting, and some of them are just supplemental receivers who have a particular skill set that would benefit what we're trying to do in Baltimore. Like I said, we'll get into that whenever we have that free agency conversation. But I think that the Baltimore Ravens need a big wide receiver, 6'4", 6'5", 6'3". You know, there's not many 6'5" wide receivers. Mike Evans is absolutely one. Michael Pittman is 6'4", 6'5". So they are, but they're very, very rare. But I think we need a big wide receiver. We need that guy who can go up and make contested catches and things of that nature. We need another guy who can take the top off of the defense. I'm not saying that Bateman doesn't have that ability, but I think after 3 years, he and Lamar just don't have that chemistry. And I think it's just been because of injury. You know, Beta has been injured. And then the 2 years prior to this one, Lamar Jackson has been injured. So when you don't have any real in-game, on-field chemistry, it's just hard to develop. And then when you saw that thing play out this past season, you know, a lot of people have said to me, well, you know, Bateman was open a lot this year. Well, he may have been open a lot this year, but when your quarterback doesn't have that chemistry with you, then he's going to always look to another, or most often look to another option, whether that option was Mark Andrews, whether that option was Zay, whether that option was Isaiah Likely or whatever. And so I think that this wide receiver room is going to look way different. And speaking of Bate, I think that this is a contract year for Bate. I do not think the Baltimore Ravens will pick up his fifth-year option just because he hasn't done enough. And when I say that, doesn't mean he's not a good player. That doesn't mean he can't be a Raven on a 3 or 4 year contract extension or anything like that. It just means he hasn't done enough in a Ravens uniform, and most of that's just been because of injury. And so that's what I see offensively, and that's why I have the Baltimore Ravens at a 5. I think this team has to make a shift to more of an offensive focus, not necessarily losing a defensive identity, but I think they have to make a shift and put some more resources into this offense. Because if we're always honest, and that's what we try to do here at the GM, this offense has been Lamar make all the plays versus Lamar can make a play. And I think that when Lamar doesn't make a play, then the whole offense stalls out. So we need some more playmakers. We need some more dynamic weaponry around him. And somebody said to me one time over the last week or so, well, Lamar Jackson has to have everything perfect. Well, the thing is this: that's not a true statement, because when has Lamar had it perfect? When has Lamar played a season when he's healthy where his running backs didn't go down? When has he played a season when his wide receivers didn't go down? When has he played a season where his number one tight end didn't go down? So I don't want to hear Lamar Jackson has to have it perfect, right? This is an offense that needs to be built out, right? This is an offense that needs to be developed up front on that offensive line. And so I think this is the offseason where the Baltimore Ravens need to do that, because I think that if we jump a year ahead, this time a year from now in 2025, this Baltimore Ravens team will look a lot different. Because I think you're going to see some of those big, weightier contracts. I think you're going to see a lot of those come off the books, and they should come off the books. And I know that, you know, just still speaking about the state of the Ravens, I know that a lot of people have complained about Lamar Jackson's contract, so on and so forth. But here's a real truth: Lamar Jackson's contract isn't a big deal if we didn't have so many upside down contracts. You see, Ronnie Stanley is going to hit the books this year for about 25 million, something like that. That's that contract to his production is upside down. When you think about Marlon Humphrey's contract, he's going to hit the books for about $20 million this year. His contract to his on field production makes that contract upside down. So between Ronnie Stanley and Marlon Humphrey, you got $45 million of a cap hit, right? When you add in Marcus Williams' contract, who's going to hit between 13 and 15 million, based on what he's done on the field, that contract makes it upside down. So now you push just between those three dudes, you're looking at roughly $60 million. And then what we've seen from Mark Andrews over the last couple of seasons, just simply because of injury, is now making his contract upside down. He's going to hit the books for about 12, somewhere in there. So you're looking at $72 million tied up into four players. If those contracts are not upside down, right? Think about the positions that I named. If Ronnie Stanley was able to hold down that left tackle position, that's a good contract. If Mark Andrews hadn't been hurt the past two seasons and on the field versus on the sideline, it makes his contract a little bit better. If Marlon Humphrey had been on the field, right, versus on the sideline, his contract is better. But because those guys have been injured, have been on the field, and have been less productive when they've been on the field, that puts a lot more strain on certain individuals to kind of just carry the team. And so the state of the Ravens is stable. We'll reassess after free agency. We'll reassess after the draft, but it's stable. But as we sit right now, they're not a championship team in 2024. So listen, I'm your guy Boulanger. This is the GM, and we're out.